You are listening to the Push Media Podcast Network.
This is good shit.
You like tips? If I may begin this very important episode, this transmission, if I may begin this episode by quoting Super Gremlin, Kodak Black, somebody call a vet, my dog turned out to be a rat. And I'm, of course, speaking of none other than crane-necked land bird, Edward Snowden. And if you haven't followed the biggest news of the past week, fuck a president in Kiev, fuck crimes against humanity committed by Russia, fuck Marjorie Taylor Greene and her counterpart SugarDaddyMeats.com, Lauren Boebert. The biggest news of this past week is obviously the fact that I have beaten Twitter. I have won. Twitter is a game that I, Colin Coyle, have successfully won. Because Edward Snowden has finally blocked me on Twitter. And Little B, the based god, bitch mob, tiny pants, I don't give a fuck, follows me on Twitter. So, I ask all of you, I'm not bragging, but how many of you are followed by Little B and blocked by Edward Snowden? That means nobody. There is not a single person on this earth who has those two combinations of people on Twitter blocking and both following them. Again, Edward Snowden has blocked me. He has proven himself to be a rat bastard, a cheese-eating rat bastard. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking like, what did you do? What did you say to Edward Snowden to get him blocked? Well, I just harassed him. I just harassed him continuously. I actually never let up. I put the pedal to the goddamn metal on Edward Snowden. Anytime he tweeted, I would just quote tweet, "You're a Russian. You're a Russian citizen. You're a Russian spy. You look like a crane-necked land bird, and no one believes your background story." Now, I could be wrong. Maybe Edward Snowden is a hero. Maybe Oliver Stone is a good director. But let's be honest. Let's be honest. Let's be honest here. Edward Snowden is a Russian citizen, and Oliver Stone's a poop director. How about that? So take that, Oliver Stone, and take that, Edward Snowden. You crane-necked land bird. The man who supposedly is most interested in free speech and people being able to call out foul play, to speak truth to power. Well, it turns out that doesn't really apply to him at all. And therefore, I am left with simply no other alternative but to think Edward Snowden, apart from being a Russian citizen currently, clearly a spy for them the whole time, and not to mention just a little tiny bitch on Twitter, I have no choice but to think you are also now a pussy. You are a pussy. Because you can't handle my tweets. I'm a fucking idiot. I am not intelligent. I have nothing good to offer anybody. I go off of hunches and no evidence because I think it's very important to speak without evidence most of the time because it keeps everyone entertained. And to think Edward Snowden, a man who, if he came back to America today, would spend 23 hours a day in a fucking hole several feet below the earth. The one thing he really wouldn't want to have to deal with if he came back to America and had to spend 23 hours a day in a fucking hole, the one thing Edward Snowden really doesn't want to have to deal with is reading Colin Coyle's tweets. How fucking cool is that? Is that not awesome? I gotta say I'm a little bit proud. It's kind of been a goal of mine ever since I realized Edward Snowden was a Russian spy this whole goddamn time. It's been a goal of mine to somehow eventually get blocked by him. And it turns out I did it. I succeeded. So I beat Twitter. Little B follows me. Shout out the base god. And motherfuck Edward Snowden and motherfuck Russia. And I say motherfuck Russia a lot of times, but now there's really a reason to say it because Russia has renewed allegations of crimes against humanity. Crimes against humanity. Now, that sounds like a card game most people have in their garage that they feel uncomfortable playing when parents are around. But actual crimes against humanity are a real thing. And some of the allegations against Russia now include throwing children off of roofs or putting them on trains. How many times How many motherfucking times must I say, if people get put on trains, we have a problem? Poland found out about the trains, and ever since, Poland's been ready to fucking go. Shout out Poland. Poland's like, let's fucking dance. Granted, they're still Polish and probably don't know their left from their right, which would make dancing difficult, and I heard all of the country is shut down for a day of somber remembrance because the duck died at the zoo. God, I love a good Polish joke, but still, the point is, Poland has a history of trains. They understand when trains are involved in military conflict, we have a problem. And again, Russia has put children on trains, okay? Taking them, stealing children. Guys, I know it's become popular because we're over a year into this Ukraine-Russian war. It's become a popular point of view here in America to adopt this isolationist stance, to adopt this position that let me put it this way. So you might have heard this past week there was news that United States was going to be sending money to the Ukraine, which was going to be used to subsidize Ukrainian pensions. Now that put people in a bit of a conniption. A lot of people were very upset, like journalist Matt Walsh, who is also a feather-headed simpleton, who was like, man, the people of the United States don't care about the Ukraine. How about we worry about the problems here? How about we worry about this? How about that? Where is the love? And the Black Eyed Peas song or whatever. Overseas, yeah, we still got terrorism, but we still got terrorism here living in the USA, the big CIA. We all know the Black Eyed Peas song, but let me tell you this. If there are children being put on goddamn trains, do you really, truly, morally, inside of your goddamn soul, do you think this is a time for isolationism? Do you think it is a time to just be like, well, it's not our problem. There are children being put on fucking trains, dog. What the fuck? And I don't... Look, I get it. There are a fuck ton of problems here in America. We have a president who's died probably 6 years ago. No one thinks anyone is actually in control of this correctly. No one's under the impression that everything is chugging along smoothly. However, I think when people, children, not adults, children, are being put on trains, murdered, taken back to Russia to be indoctrinated, we have an issue. And again, I know it's easy for me to sound tough from where I record this podcast with very little convictions, but I do have a few. I really, truly, genuinely do have a few. And I think when we find out children are being put on trains, we have to do something, okay? It could be my misguided American confidence. It could be bravado that isn't actually inside of me. But what I really, truly believe in my soul, in my gut, in my goddamn heart is when someone steals children and puts them on trains, someone has to die. I need to kill someone. I need to murder a person. I'm not calling for violence. That's not what I do. I'm a lover, not a fighter, but when children are put on trains, I think you need to be blown into next fucking week. And I don't mean in that fun way like your mom does. I'm not a war hawk. I don't like violence. I hope war never happens. I don't want to go to war. I wish the military-industrial complex was not so strong. I wish it wasn't very clear to a lot of people that there is an incentive, a profit motive, to draw out conflict all the time so Booz Allen Hamilton or whoever the fuck can keep making weapons and guns and planes and shit. I am aware of all of that shit, so don't accuse me of not being hip to that. I am aware of all of it. But again, it's just me. I just feel in my molecular core as a person, in my spirit, in my soul, if children are being put on trains, someone has to die. Someone needs to be annihilated. Actually, not even murdered. Murdered's not the right term. If you're stealing children and you're putting them on trains, I want you to be fucking annihilated off the face of the earth. I'm sorry. And I might be wrong. I might be a bitch because fundamentally, I'm bitch made, all right? I haven't actually seen conflict. I don't know what real violence is like. In my very, very brief experiences with genuine violence in my life, most of those instances didn't even involve guns. But again, and it's easy for me to say from here, if someone is taking children on trains, you need to die. Isolationism is a fine theory. In fact, it might even be correct. It might even be the one that allows a country to flourish in its most successful form. That being said, isolationism doesn't really apply anymore. We are in an interconnected world. The world went from interconnected to hyperconnected. And isolationism is cool, it's cute, it's in vogue if you're fucking Honduras. It's very easy to be like, you know what, we're going to sit this one out because we're a banana republic. But when you're America, when you're already funneling money, you already have a relationship with the Ukraine, especially via your son, Hunter Biden, the crackhead painter who happened to sit on an oil company there. You're already involved. You're already entrenched. And now, and the United States made these allegations against Russia. This isn't like the UN or NATO, specifically the United States. Kamala Harris, of all people, the first Trinidadian, I can't even say it with a straight face. The Vice President Kamala Harris literally accused Russia and said, we have a girth of evidence pointing to the fact Russia has committed crimes against humanity, murdered children and put them on goddamn motherfucking trains. So, when I hear that, when I hear children have been put on trains, my first reaction isn't, let's get $500 million back over to the Ukraine again. That'll do something. If I hear kids are being put on trains, I think you need to be, as a country, as an evil empire, blown off the face of the goddamn earth. I want everyone to be so goddamn nuclearly annihilated that we forget Russia was a place. And again, I don't mean to be a warmonger. I'm not someone who likes war. I hate, and I truly hate, and I want to say this, I hate people who have never been in the military, never served, never seen conflict or real violence, and those people are always like, well, we need to just go in and show them what America's all about. Most of the time, those people are full of shit. But in this instance, they have a goddamn point, and I agree, and I think it's time to hit the fucking red nuclear button because they're putting kids on fucking trains. I apologize for losing my cool, but I have an issue with kids being murdered. Call me old-fashioned. And, you know, it's not like, that's not to say we don't have problems here in America. We certainly do. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene, the, probably the dumbest person who's ever been elected to an American position, talking about, and I swear to God, this is real, she called for a national divorce. She called for America to be split up into multiple countries. We should just, you know what, America? We can't seem to get it figured out. We can't seem to figure out how to coexist in a symbiotic way with one another. So now we have elected congresswomen, albeit literally retarded, calling for a civil war, calling for the country to just break up into two. That doesn't sound like that would go well. Am I wrong there? Does anyone think that's a great idea? At a time like this, let's just break up the America into several Americas. That went well the first time, didn't it? You stupid fuck. Marjorie Taylor Greene used to be fun. She used to be a good time. She used to worry about space lasers and Jews controlling the weather, none of which are true. They control Hollywood. But it stops being funny when people literally elected to Congress currently, right now, it's like literally right now as I speak to you and you listen to me, Marjorie Taylor Greene is at her office in D.C. and she's calling for a civil war. That's literally what she's calling for. And granted, I don't think she's actually serious. I think really what's going on is she's just a little butthurt that Lauren Boebert from SugarDaddyMeats.com has stolen a lot of her shine. Lauren Boebert came in and said, you know what, you're crazy, Marjorie Taylor Greene. How about I one-up that and be crazier, and I'll be a prostitute. I really think that. I truly think Marjorie Taylor Greene was so used to being the top crazy bitch that now that there's a new crazy bitch in town, she feels a little threatened. So she's like, I'm going to dial up the crazy, which, you know, can be fun, but not when these people are elected to Congress, not when these people are literally the people that have the power to declare war. And the war that they're talking about declaring is not even the right fucking war. We have, again, and I don't mean to stress this point, children on trains in a different country. And instead of declaring all-out war, instead of launching every single missile, weapon, gun, rifle, the Air Force. I'm talking, I want Russia blown off the face of the earth and annihilated from human consciousness. Instead of talking about those people, Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, well, how about we just consider a civil war here instead? I know we all can't get on the same page about doing anything about the evil empire that is Russia. How about instead we could all agree that we should have a civil war, right? That makes much more sense. And this is on the heels of the latest bit of news coming out of the U.S. government that we plan on quadrupling the amount of troops that we have stationed in Taiwan. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the conflict in Taiwan, Taiwan is a country, believe it or not, even though John Cena doesn't think it is. China also doesn't think Taiwan's a country, and they want it back. Now, if you remember, Nancy Pelosi took a trip to Taiwan a few months ago just to fuck everything up further, and that is not good. And now we've decided the situation there, the tensions have become so high that we need to quadruple the amount of American troops stationed in Taiwan, which essentially means we are quadrupling the amount of American troops stationed very close to fucking China. And China has also entered the foray into this national global war problem because President Zelensky, who is, the president of the Ukraine and also a former comedian who played the piano with his dick, has said if America does not continue to give aid, give weapons, give money to the Ukraine, there will be a world war, especially if China decides to partner up with Russia. So Zelensky, and I get it's kind of his position, he kind of has to. He's kind of in charge and he wants to win. I get all of that. So he has to say things that get everyone mobilized, get everyone galvanized. However, Zelensky is also setting the stage. He's begging for a world war. You can speak things into existence, very much so. I don't know if you've read The Secret, but you can speak things into existence. And lo and behold, not after, maybe like 2 days after Zelensky said, hey man, if China gets involved, we're going to have a world war. China's like, the fuck you say? Or however you say that in Mandarin. And they decided to go meet with Russia. Now, granted, the reports coming out of the meeting between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are that China is there to hopefully broker advanced peace negotiations, because China is not stupid. They don't really want a world war because they would not really come out on top. They might survive, they have more people, but they're not going to end up in the same financially advantageous position that they are now. They don't want world war, which is good. It suggests to me that China is at least still acting rationally. They still want to preserve and hopefully become the number one superpower in the world. So, at least we can deal with that. That's rational people that we could discuss things with. However, Putin just wants a world war. He's gonna die soon, and he just wants to go out guns blazing. That's dangerous, okay? And Russia, granted, everyone thought that this war would be over in several days when it started over a year ago, but Putin still hasn't used his air force. There are still strategic things that, if you're actually following this closely, suggest, at least to me, that Putin hasn't played all of his cards, that he's still scheming on some shit. And Russians are always scheming. Granted, their plans are stupid because they literally, one of their modes of attack is to burn their own shit, but they're scheming. He is still scheming. And now China is involved, and for all we know, China could be negotiating peace talks, but they could also fucking not be. They could be very much in a closed-door meeting saying, here's what we're gonna do for real. We're gonna help you, but we're going to tell everyone we're negotiating for peace. That's just as likely. That's on the table, too. Are we supposed to start believing China now? Are we supposed to take them at their word? I certainly don't believe them, just on the face value of their statements. China, that is, because this is the same country that makes people disappear or locks them in apartments for years at a time. So this is not good. We have the world's second largest superpower meeting in closed-door meetings with literally an evil empire that has committed crimes against humanity. And our solution to that is we send in Joe Biden to Kiev for a few photo ops to let everyone know he's really tough and not senile. I don't like where this is going. I really, really, truly, genuinely feel like we are on a collision course towards something. I think this is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And instead of actually having genuine, honest, good faith negotiations amongst both sides of the alley, how do you say it? Both sides of the political spectrum, the right, the left, whatever. Anyone in Congress, anyone who's a journalist or just someone who's a talking head or has points, instead of all of us having good faith conversations about what we should do about the evil empire putting children on fucking trains, we're instead debating about whether or not we should even get involved, or maybe we just have a civil war here instead. We can't seem to get our shit together for a world war, so how about we just have a smaller, more contained civil war that results in the country splintering? That won't help Russia or China at all. And don't get me wrong, the American brouhaha, the hoopla, the debating, the comedic arguing, all of the back and forth amongst people with opinions in America is fun. It also gives me something to talk about. I like it. I enjoy following the news. I like following politics. However, I think all of that shit gets superseded when we have a country declaring proudly, we are evil. We will steal children and take them back to our own country to either indoctrinate them and eventually send them back out on our side to the war front, or if they're not really taking the indoctrination, we'll fucking kill these kids. I think when we find out something like that's happening, we need to put aside all of our differences. We need to put aside every difference of opinion. Anything that we clash heads over, any conflict that we have differences of opinions on. All of our differences need to be put aside, and we need to decide as pragmatic American people interested in peace, faith, love, prosperity, that it is now time to blow Russia off the face of the goddamn earth. Sorry, my bad. I know this is probably why I'm not in charge. This is probably why I am not the Secretary of State. Because my opinion, and I don't think it can be changed or persuaded to think anything other than this. If you're stealing kids, you have to die. You have to die. I need to kill you. You need to literally cease to exist. And you know something else that's pretty interesting? There is a pretty high-profile person who's known for disclosing important information currently in Russia. His name is Edward Snowden. He is a crane-necked landbird, and he has blocked me on Twitter. And he tweets all the live-long day about all the things America's doing wrong, about Seymour Hersh's claim that the CIA secretly blew up the oil pipeline, or all the FBI documents going missing. He tweets all the live-long day about everything America's doing wrong here. But you know what Snowden hasn't opened his mouth about? You know what Snowden hasn't said a single thing about? He hasn't said anything about the children being put on trains. And do you know why? Because he works for Russia. And do you know why he blocked me? Because I am right. So if I may end this transmission, Joe Rogan, with a message of peace, positivity, and light, it is time for all of us as Americans to come together hand in hand, understand that our differences are not what divides us, it's what unites us. We need to come together as Americans and say, you know what? It's time to blow up Russia. Sorry, comrades.